Hi everybody, thank you for joining. My name is Ori. I am in the ICS field for, I don't know, 12 or 13 years by now. Originally I started my journey in the IDF as a ICS cert of the IDF. I was one of the foundation team, and with me Maayan.
Hi everyone, my name is Maayan from Microsoft, previously from CyberX startup, mostly doing reverse engineering, malware analysis, and OT security research.
So I'm also from CyberX originally, and today we're going to talk about ICS Specto, which is incident forensics framework that allow you to understand your ICS devices. But let's begin with what is ICS. I believe that everybody in this room already understand and know familiar with the terms, but we focus in two main areas when we talk about the ICS forensics tool, which is the PLCs and the HMI. CIS is also able to be supported, but is not supported currently. And mainly when you take a look at the factory, this is the main components. The data historian is basically Windows or Linux-based servers, and all the brains of the facility is spread around those devices. Now, if we discuss about internet exposed devices, so this is a very common map that we know that's of ICS devices that exposed to the internet, as discussed earlier in the talks about segregation and the need of make sure that they are not exposed directly to the internet because it's insecure by design. And we are every year doing a new asset validation to understand what's the trends and how many devices are still exposed to the internet. And unfortunately, it's never become more like sustainable. We don't see it going down. Now, to create this project, we had two motivations. The motivation number one was to take the main highly big attacks and try to understand if we have the ability to detect them with various tools and techniques that we do at Microsoft. Now, as you're familiar with some of them, Stuxnet is implement the code on the PLC, Black Energy do the same, InDestroyer just wipe the device, I can just search for project files and try to encrypt them. And we know that this field is being highly targeted, attacked for a while, since that it's become trendy and easy, and attacking Windows and Linux being higher, and the higher the bar, attackers gonna search for a low-hanging fruit to attack. The other motivations that we have is we think of securing, of forensics we don't want to take a look at the OS. We want to understand what's actually execute on the device. So we start with the fundamental block, which is the ladder logic. The ladder logic is actually the code that execute on the PLC. Now, it's highly coupled to the CPU on the PLC, and it's really, really hard to extract in its raw form without the vendor IDE. There is no common methodology to do forensics or even understand what's going on in the ladder logic. We have a lack of ICS researchers in general in the field, and tools is one of the main problems. And the most of the knowledge are proprietary, and we understand that when everybody take proprietary and thinks they have all the solution, we don't democratize the data and the knowledge, and we keep unsecure. So there is not enough open source tool. Now, if we take the IEC 611313, which is actually each PLC in the world need to implement, you have the hardware level, which could be various hardware CPUs, and you have the OS, which the same here. It could be Windows embedded, it could be QNX, it could be I don't know, VxWorks, you name it. And upon that, there is the logical execution application. Now, each component in the PLC program need to have at least one task, and each task must have a POU, which is a program organizational unit, that's pointed to PRG, which is the actual programs that execute. Now, PLCs execute in ranks, so every time that a task finish and some condition has been implemented, it will start and execute or a new task with if the trigger apply, or the task itself will run again. Now, Maayan, for the technical side.
All right, so if we intend to investigate a PLC program, we need to think from an attacker point of view. So an attacker can add its own malicious logic as new functions, for example, or as a new task in the program to be executed in some specific manner. So the attacker can add periodically a task. Another option is to modify existing logic in strategic point in the program. For example, in Stuxnet, the attack modified the first function that was executed by the program. So when investigating PLC, we would want to extract some basic information, and after that we can create some more complex logic on top of that. So forensics artifacts we can extract would be timestamp outliners. So for example, we can look at the modification time of the program, when it was compiled, when the functions were modified, and so on. We can look at the author information, for example, who wrote this function and when, do we know this name or not. Another logic would be looking at the tasks or organizational units. This is the same name for the same thing. And tasks are basically trigger the whole execution of the program. They're like the main functions of the PLC project. So if we would look at them, we can start understanding what is going on in the program. Another thing would be to look at the network capabilities of the program. So looking at the configurations that are loaded in the program, at IPs, ports, and so on. And last one would be a comparison between the online logic that is running on the actual PLC and compare it to the offline hard copy that the engineer has. So the ICS Spectre is an open source framework we launched about 2 years ago, available on GitHub. And this framework allows everyone with Python installation, basically, to start scanning the network for available PLCs. After that, extracting the PLC program locally. After that, the framework will analyze the extracted raw data to look for some meaningful information. For example, the artifacts that we saw in the previous slide. And after that, the user will get a nice CSV graphs and basically a nice output to start and investigate the PLC program. So currently, the framework supports the S7 COM protocol for the S7 300 and 400 series, and the Rockwell RS Logic protocol, and the CodeSys version 3 protocol. And we encourage the community, the security community, to add more protocols, more logics to the tool. And that's it. Now we can see some output examples of the framework. So here is the timestamp outliners. In the upper picture, we can see a CodeSys modification datetime. of the project. And in the lower picture, we can see output for the Siemens protocol. So this is nice to start to understand when functions begin to modified. Later on, we have author information. So we can see which authors modified our code. Another important logic is extracting tasks usage. So for example, from your right, you can see the configuration for a CodeSys version 3 project file. We can see all the configuration for this specific task, when it's been executed, what kind of task it is, and so on. From the left, it's a Siemens output. So we can start see all the components, like what task is being running, what functions are being called by this task, and start the investigation from there. Next, we have communication configurations. So, for example, here for the upper picture, we can see output for the Siemens protocol, and we can see that the program uses, for example, TCP communication with these specific ports and IPs, and we can start examining these IPs and see if it makes sense to us during the investigation. And in the lower picture, we can see that the CodeSys project loaded the Modbus library, for example. Next on, we have project comparison, as I said. So this is an example of the S7 protocol. And we can see in a very nice way which blocks are different, which functions are basically different or equal between the loaded project on the PLC to the hard copy that we have. So it's really important as part of an investigation. And lastly, we have the execution call graph. So this is a very nice way to see which functions are being called by by functions. We can see function names, and for example, in the right we can see Siemens output. So Siemens has its own terminology and colors, so it's really convenient. And when we start to understand what is going on in a program, and all of that is available on GitHub, as I said. You can start to explore it, see if it fits your own needs. And I think we have 2 minutes for questions now. So thank you very much. Yes. So it's a good question. So the question was about the sensitivity of the execution. So the responsibility is on the one that executes the tool, the engineer or the security analyst or whatever, needs to know that the environment is sensitive. The best approach is to test the execution before that, make sure the PLC is not like, on the high alert line, and really make sure everything runs smoothly, and after that execute in the appropriate environment, basically. It's an open source after all, and it's been executed on sensitive environments, so. Thank you very much.